The Liberal Party, the ruling Liberal Party in Canada, has always had a leadership problem. For the last 25 years, they've basically had no one. No one who is intelligent and can actually make decisions and craft policy. After being out of power for 10 years in the 2000s because of Stephen Harper on the conservative side, the Liberal leadership basically said, none of us have the charisma to be a competent leader. The people just don't like us at all. So what if we picked an empty suit, some guy with a pretty face and great hair, and put him in front and moved his chin every once in a while, but actually didn't let him do anything, and we just have a competent cabinet behind him to actually take care of governance. And the person they found was Justin Trudeau, who was a borderline failed kindergarten teacher, but he had the name. Trudeau, his father Pierre, had been prime minister years ago and was quite successful. Dude could move a room when he wanted to. But the guy is, at best, an airhead. And so the person who really matters on Canadian affairs is a woman by the name of Chrystia Freeland, former journalist, was on the Putin government's shit list long before it became cool to do so because she investigated him early on. I beat her in a debate about 15 years ago.
I think America rightly measures itself not against Turkey. Is America supposed to be proud it imprisons fewer journalists than Turkey? I'm sorry, no, hey Joe, I didn't interrupt you. America really is the city on the hill, and America needs to measure itself against itself. I'm arguing decline on two main points. One, America is failing Americans. And this is not about some, namby-pamby, NPR-ish, ethical, moral point. This is about saying the middle class is falling behind, and you talked, Peter, movingly about Generation Y. If we talk to the Generation Y people here, there are no good jobs for Generation Y. Generation Y is being Uberized and TaskRabbit-ized. That is the problem.
Let's let Peter. You want to make this a relative to the United States past rather than the rest of the world? That's fine. Andrew Jackson's wife was accused in a live debate of being a prostitute while she was First Lady. Gridlock is normal. John Adams was accused of being a hermaphrodite without any of the positive characteristics, whatever the hell that means. Gen Y doesn't have opportunities. Let's take it from the economic side. Look back to the 1800s. We had an empty continent that anyone for the price of a Kia car could load up the family, head west, take land that we stole from the natives, and be exporting grain for hard currency to war-torn Europe within 6 months. That will never happen again because there's not another continent.
She went on to become foreign minister, finance minister, and deputy prime minister of a G7 country. Let's call that a wash. Anyway, I think she is one of the smartest people alive in the world today. She's arguably the smartest person alive in Canada. She's certainly the smartest person alive in the Canadian government. And she has been the person who has been responsible for recrafting what Canada means in the modern age. If you go back to before the end of the Cold War, the relationship between Canada and the United States was the only one that mattered. We've always been their number one trading partner by a huge margin. And the way it worked was the Canadians were always the first people to show up when there was an international crisis to pledge their support. But then as the details were being worked out, they would ask for a trade concession for Saskatchewanian wheat or Ontarian auto parts or whatever it happened to be. And eventually all of those exemptions to American trade law were folded into NAFTA 1 as a kind of thank you, codifying the situation. Well, Chrystia Freeland became foreign minister about 8 years ago, and the same week she became foreign minister is Trump's first day in office during his first term. And the rule book went out the window. And Canada went from being like country number 35 that the U.S. thought about, because there was Russia, there was China, there was Japan, there was Germany, there was France, all of a sudden, in a more nationalistic world, from the American point of view, Canada all of a sudden is like number 3, because it's our first, second, or third largest trading partner based on how you run the numbers, and has been for a couple decades. So she had to make it up on the fly. And while you can fight with her over her politics, and that is totally fair, any successes that Canada has had in macroeconomic policy, in foreign affairs, and especially in relations with the United States, regardless of the American president, you can pretty much credit to her, because it certainly wasn't Justin. She had a spat with the Trudeau leadership, Justin, a couple of days ago, and she left the government. Specifically, the trigger was Donald Trump threatening all those tariffs on his first day at the job, and it's sounding like Justin Trudeau basically wanted to spend money to make the difference up, and since she can do math and she knows that she's not the United States, Christina Freeland realized that that would not be sustainable in the long run. She wanted something better. He wouldn't give it to her. She resigned as finance minister. He offered her a different job. She's like, nope, I'm out. And so the brains that behind the face are now out of government. And the question is whether this is the end, and it probably is for the Trudeau government. Now, we were going to get here anyway. Canada at the national level rarely has politics that are as stable as the United States, and I know that's because it's a confederation. A confederation is a place where the individual states or provinces have actually more power than the nation. So you have basically 10 different sets of economic and sometimes even foreign policy going on in Canada, which gets you a much more fractured political system with a lot more variety than we have between, say, Mississippi and New York. In addition, the electoral system is skewed in a different direction, so it encourages smaller parties, especially regional parties, to participate in the fray rather than the two big tent parties that we get. And so you get fringe parties like the NDP, which are basically, they wouldn't do very well in Berkeley because Berkeley's too conservative. You also get regional parties that are more nationalistic driven, like say the Bloc Québécois, which in the past has argued for secession, or the Wild Rose Party in Alberta for the same thing. What this means is at the national level, you get a kaleidoscope of groups in their parliament, their equivalent of Congress, and forming a government can be difficult, and maintaining that government can be difficult. And one of the parties that formed this most recent government, the NDP, left the coalition earlier this year, but has not voted against the government in parliament. So now we've got a split in the ruling Liberals with the brains and the face on different sides. So really the ball is in Ms. Freeland's court. If she decides that she wants to oust the government, she can do it with a simple vote. She has enough followers in the parliament. It would be an easy play. If she decides she wants to take over the Liberal Party herself, she certainly can do it and maybe put an end to the 25-year drought of not having an intelligent person at the helm. Whether that means she would actually win the premiership in a new election, that remains to be seen. The guy on the conservative side is relatively untested at the national level. They've been having a series of leadership problems ever since Harper as well, and so it would be kind of a crapshoot. The issue that is defining most political conversations in Canada today is actually a bipartisan issue. Back 25 years ago, the Canadians were one of the most quickly aging societies in the world, and then under the conservative Harper government, they started to open the door to immigration a little bit wider every year. That continued under the Trudeau government. They realized that if they didn't start bringing in lots and lots and lots and lots of people under age 30, that their country was going to age into oblivion, much like the Chinese or the Russians. And that was decided that that was not a great thing, and immigration was their solution. And it's worked, kind of. It's certainly headed off the labor problem. It's certainly rounded out the bottom of the population structure, which will buy them 20, 30, maybe even 40 years without a change in policy. The problem is when you increase the population of your country by 10 to 15% in 15 years, you have 10 to 15% more people that need some place to live. And since they're coming from another continent and then they flew there, they've got a little cash with them, they've got a skill set with them, because that's how your immigration system works, and they can afford to buy a house, which drives up the price of living for everyone.